Hello there and welcome to this exclusive watercolour tutorial. Now what we've got here is your Create and Craft Club members free gift. Now we've given you some wonderful watercolour tools here to have a go at these two beautiful paintings, and very shortly I'll be taking you through how to do these pictures. So what you actually get in this kit is a palette which contains the three primary colours. Now these colours are going to be a natural blue, a natural orange and a natural red, with enough paint to do the two paintings and a little bit more so as well. 2 sheets of premium watercolour paper. This is £140 or 300 gram watercolour paper, and we'll give you these two beautiful bevel mounts that you can see actually make a lovely job of framing up the actual scenes once you've completed them, and a brush to do the job. So it's pretty much got everything you need, apart from, if you have a little look over here, we've actually got some extra little tools. So I'm just going to walk over this side and just kind of show you those extra bits that you actually need for this. So first of all, I've got some masking tape, and I will stick this sheet of paper, which is included in your free gift, to a board. Now the board doesn't have to be anything fancy, just a piece of cardboard or something would be fine. So we'll do that first of all. We'll take the tape. It's just masking tape, nothing too fancy here, and just a slight overlap, and that will keep that watercolour paper nice and firm for putting some water on. So we'll stick all 4 sides, and you can see I'm just putting a very thin overlap on all 4 sides. Now, as well as sticking this to a board, it's good to get a slight tilt on your board. So although I'm working on an easel, this is more for demonstration purposes. So this is not something what is needed. Just a tabletop, and just pop something under the back of the board so you get a very slight tilt will be absolutely spot on for this. So it's all stuck down, and then what we've also got is some water. So we've got a nice water pot here, so that's all kind of filled up ready straight from the tap there, so that's all ready to go. And I've got some kitchen paper as well, which is good for sort of mopping up the mess sometimes. And then we are ready for action. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put a complete wash on the background to paint a beautiful sky. Now in watercolours, you start off with water. So very simply, a nice loaded brush, and I'm just going to wet the entire sheet of paper. Now this brush is the one that's included in your free gift. It is a SAA worker brush, or a size 6, a beautiful wash brush with a gorgeous point for doing that little bit of extra detail where needed. So literally just wet the entire sheet of paper. My advice is wet it twice, if not 3 times, and that gives you plenty of time to work against the drying page. And just sort of move your head around to make sure you've not missed any bits, because it's quite easy to get a few little dry spots on this. So I'm just sort of looking down the edge here and literally just using water to make sure it's all nicely covered, which it is. Beautiful. Now let's put some colour on. So this palette, I want to move the palette up here so we can see we've got the 3 colours here. So it's the blue, the orange and the red. And the first colour is the orange. Take a little bit of water and just kind of wiggle at the bottom of the blob of paint. You can see that the paint very quickly starts to come out, and an extra wiggle makes it go a little bit stronger. So it's really easy to go straight in with that orange and literally just go straight in. Right across the centre from left to right. So really, really easy. Left to right, straight across. Keep picking up more colour. Start to work down into the water as well, because it's going to be a bit of a lake scene that we're doing here. So keep picking up a bit of paint, and it's pretty much in the middle. It's pretty much in the middle. And it's a nice, rich coverage. Beautiful. Now what we'll do next is we'll introduce another colour into that. So if we bring the red and mix it with the orange, it'll go much more of a fiery colour. So I'll bring the red, and look, it's very easy to connect the colours together. Beautiful sort of fiery orange colour coming through there, right across the top, forward and back with your brush strokes. And you can see how a little bit of paint goes an absolute mile with this as well. Watercolour is a very economical art form. And it's amazing how the colour is different when you see it on the paper as well. That just shows that we're giving you really quality, artist quality material here. So it's the red and the orange, just mixing a bit more, just to add a little bit to the base of the picture. Horizontal lines. Forward, back, just like you're putting emulsion paint on. What could possibly go wrong? Just bring it in, get all the colours mixing together, forward, back. And you get that beautiful background, which is the starting point. It's the starting point of this sunset. Now, just to give the sunset a little bit of extra oomph, we're going to pop in some silhouetted clouds against the actual sky. So for this, we're going to mix a little bit of a darker colour, very easy to do. Already we've got the orange and the red mixed together, so that's that kind of fiery orange. If we introduce the blue into this, so just take a bit of the blue, and it starts to go grey, which is great for doing clouds, especially on a sunset or a sunrise. You get that beautiful silhouetted cloud effect. You can see that lovely colour coming through, and the more blue that goes into that orange, the more towards a grey you're going to get. Now it's good to pick the paint up and give it a bit of a tickle on the tissue, which sounds exciting. And what we'll do is we will twist the dark colour. Practice this little twist, this little rotation of your 3 fingers, and just give it a bit of a twist. And if you move along, just imagine a steam train that's chugging by, or a distant power station. Beautiful. If we give it a tilt forward, you'll see there, you see that beautiful, nice kind of silhouette clouds. Now let's continue, pick up more colour, tickle on the tissue, and then straight in to the next cloud. And literally it's using the side of your brush rather than the tip of your brush. And it doesn't matter how quick or slow you do this, just take your time and rotate the brush and twist it along and start to lift the brush off the paper, so eventually it just uses the point of the brush rather than the whole brush. Again, the colour, if you run out of colour, just very simply mix a bit of orange with a bit of red and then add the blue to it, and you'll get a nice sort of grey sort of tone. Beautiful. And then tap on the tissue and let's just pop in another little cloud just here. So a nice twist. The paper is almost dry at this point, which is fine. And then we'll rotate across. Little swirls of your brush. And you can see that. And then I'm just going to do a tiny little one just here, again on the tissue. Really important, that little sort of tap on the tissue there, or tickle on the tissue. And then just move across. And we can add some little tiny ones. Beautiful. Can't go wrong with that, can you? Now what we'll do is we will soften those in and make them look more as though they're part of the picture. So clean your brush. Again, a couple of taps. Now this time, look, you can see it's just water. So a couple of taps on the tissue, and then horizontally go into the bottom of that cloud. Horizontal strokes. Can you see? I'm actually washing away the base of that cloud. This hard line that you've got at the bottom, if you've got a hard line at the base of the cloud, it's water, 2 taps on tissue, and then just horizontally sweep. And you can do that on all clouds. Trying to blend those ends away as well. Can you see I'm taking the ends away? It really starts to make a difference. You can clearly see that nice evening sky. If you've got any hard lines on the top of the clouds, we've got a few hard lines up there, we can work those in. Water, tissue, and then you can just lightly scribble the top edge. Can you see how it's feathering the edge? It's bleeding the paint away. And you could do this a couple of hours after you've put the sky in if you wanted to. No rush. Watercolour paint never really permanently dries, but the thing to think about here is to keep refreshing the brush, wipe it on tissue and give it a bit of a tickle. Tickle the edge of the cloud, as well as tickling your brush on your tissue. And you can see it gives a beautiful little sort of softness to it. Let's come back to that colour, which you can see is starting to separate. Can you see how the blue? Let's just stare at that for a little bit, because that looks beautiful, that. It's almost hypnotic, that little bit of a blob. You can almost see a bit of a face, 2 eyes and a sort of nose thing there. And you can see how the blue separates out of the colour. Let's mix it back together again. So you do get that grey coming back. More blue makes it more grey, should you need to do that. And notice that the colours aren't, I'm risking it here, notice that the colours aren't dripping off that palette. That's because there's very little water. It doesn't need much water. Just enough to make the paint flow, but you never need to use that thick blob, just enough to make the paint flow on the brush, So it's a different brush stroke. So let's let's imagine this painting is divided into thirds. Let's say that the top 2/3 is going to be the sky and the bottom third is going to be the water and a little bit of landscape. So the cloud was a twist, it was a twist, whereas now it's more of a horizontal ripple. Have a practice on a scrap piece of paper first, pick up the paint, tap it off on the kitchen paper and then hover across your picture. We'll do it in slow motion, we can do that on here, and we will basically, when we're ready, we'll touch the paper. And what it does, it puts little random horizontal lines, keep picking up more colour on the tissue, little horizontal lines, keep that paint moving, and eventually you'll see how things start to, it gives movement, it gives a bit of ripple, a bit of movement in your water, which is healthy apparently. So what we'll do is we will just pop a little bit more into the foreground, keep going. But if you look really close at that paint, you can see it's got like a dry sort of tyre track texture to it, and that's a beautiful way of describing dry brush, a tyre track. But basically it's a quickly painted brush stroke. If you painted it very carefully like this, it doesn't really look like a ripple, but you do it quickly and it looks more natural. Horizontal being the key, horizontal being the key. And again, it's going to work up to about 1/3. Beautiful. So at this point, you've done your sky, you've done your water. Now, if your clouds have still got hard tops and hard bases, there's nothing stopping you. And this is important to sort of re-emphasise this one, because it's really important to mention that you can revisit watercolour at any time and not have any problems with actually softening. So if we were to look at the cloud here, that is pretty much dry, not quite, but pretty much dry. Nothing stopping me at this point, just water, give it a couple of taps on the tissue, so it's removed the excess, and then again, you're going to tickle the top of your cloud, just with the tip of the brush, and look how it blurs it, it softens it. Fabulous. Okay, so let's give that a dry. Now at this point, you could pause the video, you could go and put the kettle on, or you could grab a heat gun or a hairdryer and give it a bit of a dry. So let's give it a bit of chance to dry. We'll come back to it shortly once it's dry, and then we'll paint in some distant mountains. And while it is drying, just let me tell you a little bit about this here, which is Watercolour TV. Now Watercolour TV is it's my kind of art world. It's based online, and we have thousands of members all around the world that are actually part of Watercolour TV. And Watercolour TV is normally a year's membership to thousands of hours of watercolour tuition with me, Matthew Palmer, and it covers everything from landscapes to animals. It's got starter courses for complete beginners right through to people that are a little bit more advanced in the painting. And as a member of Watercolour TV, you get unlimited access to thousands and thousands of hours of watercolour tuition. Also, you get printable worksheets as well, and discounts on the products that we sell on the Watercolour TV shop. Now, because this is a Create and Craft membership exclusive, we do actually have a bit of a special offer. So normally you get 12 months access to Watercolour TV for $49.99, but here we've got 15 months, so 3 months extra free for $49.99. And this does also includes not only videos tuition, that there's live broadcasts happen on a regular basis as well, and you can see here the website on the screen how to purchase this with item number 042196. It's a great offer, folks, and it's a limited offer in relation to the Create and Craft watercolour tutorial free session that we're giving you here, so do check that out as well. Now, I'm pretty sure that that is nice and dry, and we're ready to move on. And we're going to paint in some distant mountains. Now for this, I want to use the masking tape. I'm just having a search for it. There it is. We've got the masking tape here. Now this is just normal masking tape, nothing too fancy here. But what's important with this tape is that you remove the stickiness before you stick it to the paper, and be creative how you do this. Wipe some moisture from the brow, stick it to your trousers, wipe your fingers over it a few times, and literally I will show you where to stick it. This is going to go about a third of the way up, just above those ripples, horizontally would be the perfect thing to do. So stick it down like so. Beautiful. Now, when it comes to removing that masking tape, you'd be very careful, but also it's quite nice to actually use a hairdryer or a heat gun to heat up the back of the tape, because it comes off in a nice casual way. And it's just using that grey, it's just using the grey for this. So if we come back to the palette, it's all nice and dry, but water brings it alive. Again, there's plenty of colour here. Let's mix up that grey in the same way that we mixed it for the sky. So the orange with the red and the blue. So it's all three colours together, and you can see you start to get grey. If it goes a bit brown, that means it wants a little bit more blue, basically. Perfect. So brown and blue make grey, and there we go, we've got it. And then press the tape down as well, and hold your brush quite loosely, and try and be nice and random with this, and paint in some distant cliffs, mountains, hills, that kind of thing. Watch out for painting pyramids, as some people do. And if you struggle to do random, try swapping hands. No, that's not going to work, is it? We'll carry on as we were. We'll carry on as we were. But just give it some nice character, give it some nice texture. Working down towards that masking tape. Now, as you get towards the masking tape, to prevent seepage, because nobody wants seepage, what we're going to do is we are going to actually give the brush a little bit of a tap on the tissue. So you've got a dry brush, okay? And that way, if there's less paint on the brush, there's less chance of seepage. And basically, it's pick the paint up, wipe it on the tissue, and give it a little bit of a scribble right down to that edge. Beautiful. Excellent. Again, you can just work it in. You can play around with the shape should you need to. Get little peaks. And if you want to add a bit more character to these distant mountains or hills, you can make a stronger version of the colour. So let's grab the palette again. So I will again mix the orange and the red, but a little bit thicker, and we'll introduce more blue. Really bring some blue into this, so it's nice and strong. Look how dark that colour's starting to appear there, nice and heavy. So again, if it goes a bit too brown, then just add more blue to the mix. There you go. Blue's the main colour here, but it's quite thick. I'm sure you can see how strong that actually is. Perfect. So I keep adding a bit more blue to this, making it really heavy. Now, if you take a look at that brush, you can see how pointy the brush actually is. It's really sharp and pointy, which is great for doing detail. So pick that strong grey up, take your time mixing the colour, don't be afraid to spend a bit of time with it. Just give it a bit of a tap on here. And let's paint in some trees. Let's paint in some trees. What we'll do is we'll paint some telegraph poles first of all, and we'll have a couple of those going in. You can play around with the heights of these, 3 or 4 of those. Start to do more, but closer together and quite freely painted. And then we can go along the bottoms of the telegraph poles, and you can take that down into the centre. So it's little sort of diagonal lines. Imagine this is a pine forest, a distant pine forest, perching at the base of the mountains or the hills. And then we'll continue this across here. Nice and strong. Notice the way I'm holding the brush at this point. I am actually resting on the paper, so you can really control that brush. And every so often you can paint in a tall tree. Continue along. And you can take it right down to a point. So you basically get that little valley happening. But these tall telegraph poles want to be turned into something that looks more like a tree. And what we do is hold the brush and you start to use that as a central line of symmetry. So you kind of go either side and you flick your brush outwards. If If I tilt it forward, my hand gets in the way less, and you can see how you can make this kind of feathery tree. Same on that side as well. So that's your classic sort of tall pine tree. And just keep literally branching out, just go for it. Wide at the bottom, that's the joke of the day, that one. And then we'll just bring it up to the point, and we'll go either side. Beautiful. Works nice, you know, and it starts to give scale to the picture as well. Look at your picture from a distance, lean back, do an artistic lean, look at it from a distance, think, well, I'll stick another tree there, etc. And literally, just take your time, but nice and strong with the colour. Have a go at using very little water. That's probably what you realise about this. If you're new to watercolours, you probably think that you put a load of water, you slap it all on a bit, but you don't. It's just a little bit of water that just activates the colour, which you can see there is absolutely beautiful. And a great way of adding a nice bit of pine tree detail. Now, as you can see on this one, it's starting to get a bit dry, so the paint's getting a little bit dry. So a little bit of water goes an absolute mile. So a little bit of water reactivates the colour. And you mix all that together, and it all goes a bit of a sort of grey tone, a bit of a dark tone. It's a shadow colour. That's what's important. It's the shadows, the silhouette of a sunset against the silhouette of the trees. One on each side. And there we go. So let's just spend a little bit of time making sure we've got a real dark base. And then the bit where people come unstuck, obviously, is taking the tape away. You just got to do it very carefully and keep your fingers crossed there's no seepage. But that's satisfying, is that? That's really satisfying. Now look, I've got goosebumps. That's because the air conditioning's on in the studio. Now, once we've done that, let's pop a little bit of reflection of these trees. But even at this stage, you could walk away with a smile on your face because you've created a little watercolour masterpiece, which is beautiful. And that is what this is all about. You've got the tools, you've got the paper, you've got the paints, you've got the brush, and you've got the mounts to pop on at the end. But let's continue with that same colour. Again, it's getting a wee bit dry. There's a blob of water there. Can you see a blob of water? Why waste it? We'll put that up there, saving the planet together. What we're going to do is we're going to use that, and we're going to pop a few ripples, little horizontal ripples. Again, hold your brush right at the tip. I think it's dry enough. So little teeny weeny horizontal lines working across. And where those trees are, you can be a little bit taller with your horizontal lines. There we go. So you can see it starts to create a little bit of reflection. Nothing too fancy, but a little bit of reflection. Over here, of course, don't be afraid to use good strong colour and do a few, really build it up. And again, artistic lean, step back a little bit, look at it, double chin, look back at your picture. You can see the nice sort of reflections in place. If you've missed a bit, pop it in. It's always good to look back at your painting from a little bit of a distance. And one of my favourite little bits to do with water is to make it look as though you've got depth to it. So far we've done horizontal ripples, if you like, horizontal reflections and ripples. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go back in and we're going to put some lines that come down. You remember those dry lines that we added horizontally across? I call them tyre tracks. That's kind of what they remind me of. But we'll do a similar thing, but we'll go down the picture. Let me show you how to do this one. Really works well, but a good one to practice. So if you sat next to somebody else who's painting along as well, just practice on theirs while they're not watching. Now what we'll do is we'll take the blue and whatever colour makes the grey here on the brush, and we'll give it a tickle on the tissue. Remember that one? A bit of a tap on the tissue so it removes the excess, as you can see right there. Then what you do is you get your fingers at the bottom of your brush here, and at the base of the bristles you get your fingers in until it goes a bit spiky. Let's do a shopping channel rotation. Professional. No expense spared, let me tell you. Now what we'll do here is we're going to go in and we're going to practice on the side of the paper, and we're going to go straight down. And these lines are very, very dry. There's almost nothing going on the paper. But can you see these little sort of drop lines? Almost little downward areas of paint. Subtle is what it is, with a silent B. Bring them in. And it helps to give depth to your water. So it gives a bit of a reflection. But it certainly is one to practice on the side of your page before you apply it to your picture. But it gives drop, it gives depth to your water. Beautiful. Now again, at that stage, you've got a picture, finished picture, job's a good one. But we'll take it further and we'll paint in a little boat. We'll paint in a little boat just here in the centre there, just to give a bit of added extra detail. So for this, we need to be quite dark with your colour, and I'll show you how easy it is to paint a boat on your picture. So what we'll do is we'll start with the blue this time. So I'm mixing grey again, but I'm getting a good thick wriggle around in that blue, because that's going to be the key colour for this. This has got to be as dark as we can get it. So really sort of encourage the blob. Here's a good tip. If your blob is a bit dry, just get some really hot water carefully and just dot it over the top and leave it there for 10-15 minutes before you start painting. It'll make the paint go a little bit more fresh and active, if that makes sense. So a more active or moist blob. Now what we'll do, I was desperate to get the word moist in this, I was. So there's the blue. We'll pop in a little bit of red, just a touch. So if you look close, you'd see you're starting to get towards purple, a purpley colour, okay? And then a little bit of orange will turn it to a really deep grey. So if you look at that grey compared to the grey before, you can see it's like night and day, literally. So it's blue with a dot of red and a dot of the orange, and that will give you a lovely dark colour. What could possibly go wrong? Just mix it all in. Brilliant. So I've got a loaded brush, Okay, so I want to paint a boat. Let me show you how to do a boat. We'll pop it just, here's a good place on this picture. You can stick it anywhere you like, really. I want to pop it just sort of here. And what you do is you do a figure of 8 or an infinity sign. So we bring that round like so. Okay, and then you decide which is the front, the back, or the bow and the stern. For me, I want to do that as the back of the boat. And I want to fill that in with dark paint. So that's the inside of the hull, basically. Nearly said the cabin, but it's the hull. And then we'll come down. Anticipation's half the fun, eh? You can smell the fear, can't you, while you're doing this? Now what we'll do is we'll pop this in and we'll go straight across, and we will slightly darken the bottom. Okay, still not looking very much like a boat. It'll improve with age. We are literally going to push the boat out now. We're going to clean the brush. It's like a script, this. What we'll do is we'll wipe off the excess water. So it's clean brush, wipe it off there 3 or 4 times. Use that brush and literally go in and scrub until it completely starts to fade. Okay, so you're starting to add a bit of light. Nothing stopping you going back into your brush a couple of times and just add in a bit of water to encourage that to blend. So it appears a little bit lighter just there. Now I've picked up some more colour just to slightly darken that corner. And I will also just start to introduce a little bit of reflection at this point as well. Again, Palmer's top tip for today is if your paint's a bit dry, just add water. That's why it's called watercolour, you see. So we'll drop that in. And even if you left that paint there a week, 2 weeks, a year, just water. If it's really stubborn, a little bit of hot water is a great way to get your paint really, really active. Okay, so horizontal lines would be a nice thing to introduce here, just below. So that starts to give us a little reflection of the boat. And then we can just enhance the shape, make sure all your corners are nice and tidy. Perfect. Lovely. So make sure it's really dark at that bottom there. I'm going to pop a little bit of a rope coming down where it's moored. And if I do a little bit of a wiggle below the rope, it starts to give a little hint of reflection as well. Now let's put the mast in. We'll pop the mast in here. A nice steady hand for this one, of course, is what's required. Just mixing more of the same colour basically. So we'll pop the mast in, which I want to go fairly tall, to be honest, probably about here. Notice I'm resting on the paper when I do this. We'll get that in there. Then we'll pop some more detail on. We'll have a little bit of a cross at the top. Lovely. And then we'll do a little bit of a rolled up sail. Again, this is all using the dark colour, so just basically take your time. That rolled up sail gets gradually smaller. You can add as much detail as you like, little spots and little lines on your boat as well. You've got to have a flag. There you go. And then I'm just going in, because now the boat's dry, I can go in and just pop a little bit of extra dark on there. Make sure it's all nicely doing its job. Now, when it comes to painting rigging, it is quite a nice thing to add, because it does actually make the boat look a bit more interesting. But quite often people get a bit concerned about the unrigging, but you've got the right brush for the right job. You've got a lovely pointy brush here, and if you rotate your board a little bit to the side, so it's facing away from you, have a practice at doing this one so you get that nice kind of natural stroke of your brush. Same colour. Think about that brush. It's very pointy. We can see just how really pointy that brush actually is. I want to use that point of the brush, and I'm going to go towards the top of the mast, and we're going to just let it taper off in its own right. It does make a difference. I would be tempted as well to pop some from the back of the boat as well. And just randomly, anywhere you like, use your brush like a pencil. Really get some nice detail into it. And then we'll give that a split second just to dry. We'll turn it back the right way. We've got a nice boat there. And while that's drying off, we'll pop some birds in the sky. And it wouldn't be a painting without a bearded chuff, which is the best birds around. So we'll have a couple of little bearded chuffs just up here. Practice your birds like you practice your signature. Just gives a bit of interest, silhouetted against the sky, and then literally, before I put the finishing touch on that picture, it just needs a few moments for that boat to dry, and we'll come back to it again in a few seconds. While it is drying, there's nothing stopping just adding a bit of extra darkness to the base of the trees, because, you know, watercolour is transparent, so it allows you to work back in again at any time. And again, it's just a great way of sort of showing how you can add, how you can go back into watercolours and you can add extra clarity, extra sharpness to it. You can really play around with it. Lovely. Now while that's drying off again, let's give it a minute or so. Again, it's worth just mentioning again, that's Watercolour TV. So if you do want to get into a bit of watercolour painting, there's a 15-year back catalogue of watercolour lessons on Watercolour TV. And remember, as a member of this, you get 15 months membership here through Creating Craft. So you actually get 3 months extra. Now there's nowhere to get that, and of course club members only pay $44.99 as well. So here's the information. The item code is 042196, and you've got thousands of hours of me teaching you how to paint from complete beginners right through to all different levels. Seascapes, there's woodlands, there's beautiful skies, there's animals on there. It's a great way to get into painting. Do make sure you check that one out. Now I think that's pretty much dry. So I'm just going to pop some lift out on this, a few highlights to finish off the picture. Now highlights are great because it's a dry piece of kitchen paper and it's just water. So just water, again, a little bit of a tap on there, remove the excess water. Have a practice in your mountains first, and basically if you scrub the damp tip of the brush and then press it with a dry, clean piece of tissue, can you see that it gently removes a little bit of colour? You can do the same here as well. It's actually washing paint off. It doesn't matter how dry it is. What is important is how you actually scrub on this, and you do spend a little bit of time encouraging the paint to actually blend. So give it some welly and give it some tap. Belting effect, that. I love it. It really catches the light, and of course we could do a similar thing in some of these trees. If you want to put a little bit of light in these trees, there's nothing stopping using a little bit of water and using the tip of the brush, especially where there's two trees overlapping. Now if you look at that tissue, you can see it's just dry there. Press it firmly. It's removed that bit of colour and it's giving that little bit of light. So you've got layers in your tree. Great on your boat as well. So water through the tissue. The bow there, just pop a little bit. A bit of a line, press it firmly. You've got the line down the middle of your boat, and then that would also reflect as well. So 4 or 5 times over the same area, press it firmly, and you can see it starts to reflect. If you didn't quite get the darkness here, you can go back in just with water and you can lighten the boat as well. So if you didn't quite get that light edge on your boat, then you can just go in and you can just give it a good firm tap with a dry piece of tissue, and it makes it look more three-dimensional. You know, it's always good. You can pop little bits inside the hull of the boat as well, a couple of little sort of lines here and there and a couple of little taps, and it just gives a bit more interest to watch actually there. And it's non-destructive. What I mean by that, it's not going to damage your paper. So if you take something off that you shouldn't, just give it a moment to dry and you can very easily go back into it again and just encourage it to be painted again. A great way to appreciate your picture is to pop a mount, and remember with this free gift you do get some mounts included. Mounts really do make a big difference. I mean, look at the face, put a mount on, before, after. So here the best bit, which is popping the frame on, and of course you can sort of frame the picture up, and that is a lovely little watercolour painting. Do enjoy it, folks. No sketching, just 3 colours, 1 brush, and you can't go wrong. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Do give it a go, because watercolour is a very satisfying medium, and I'll see you very soon.